Hi everybody, welcome to another video by Scully. Today's topic I wanted to discuss was being a perfectionist and or perfectionism. I think a lot of people have probably been accused of being a perfectionist at some time in their lives because sometimes we get particular about things. People can be working together on a project and one person really wants to do it this way, or they really kind of want to maybe take charge of it more than other people, or somebody changes something slightly on that project and the person gets upset. They're like, hey, don't be a perfectionist. Perfectionism, I feel like, can actually kind of manifest in different ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be about everything. Sometimes I think the most common form of honestly being a perfectionist is kind of when people are what are called people pleasers. Those people have very good intentions. When you have people you care about, you really don't want to let them down. You want to show them that you're dependable no matter what. So obviously that's kind of a lot of pressure, but a lot of people, they kind of want to show how devoted they are and how much they care by making people around them happy. Well, making people happy, it's a great thing. And if you're able to very easily, that's quite a gift because it's very hard to make some people happy sometimes. And that can be very frustrating. So with being a people pleaser, you may eventually get stuck with the person who is very difficult to please no matter what you do. And they might even have some days where maybe it's not as bad and everything kind of goes okay. But if you're a people pleaser, especially if you don't even realize it, it can be very stressful. It can create a lot of fear of failure. It can create a lot of self-esteem issues because if you let the person down, you're really going to give yourself a hard time. And then you're going to feel like that person doesn't want anything to do with you if you let them down enough times, or maybe even just the one time if it's somebody that you really care about. So you can kind of see how maybe being a bit of a perfectionist and being a people pleaser can go hand in hand pretty commonly. I mean, maybe not always, but they can. So if you're somebody who's a people pleaser, what is something that you can do to kind of help with that? Well, maybe it's not possible to necessarily stop being a people pleaser or stop being a perfectionist because for some people that is kind of who they are. They do strive on making people happy and really kind of say being at the top of their class or doing really well at their jobs. Things that especially things that they take pride in. But you really kind of want to take care of your own stress with that too. From my experience, being a people pleaser doesn't always have to be a bad thing, and you don't necessarily have to make yourself stop being a people pleaser. You kind of just have to understand boundaries more than anything else. Like, there's nothing wrong with making people happy, especially if it makes you feel good. That stuff can be really nice. But just understand that sometimes there are limits to what you can do when you make people happy. I mean, let's face it, you can't read their mind. You're not going to know every single thing about somebody. You're not going to know the precise temperature they want their coffee. You're not going to know if they want the crust cut off their sandwich. You're only human and so are they. So like I said, you can always try your best to be you can still be a people pleaser and have limitations to protect yourself as well. I think a lot of it is kind of just getting a grip on the fact that, like I said, you can make people happy, but you can also protect yourself as well. So as long as you take care of yourself too and kind of just realize that you're going to have times where you screw up, whether you mean to or not, it just is what makes you human. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you just have to you have to reward yourself for the things you do right because like I said, for some people it is very hard. Not only just making people happy, but just anything in life can be very difficult, especially when there's a lot of stress to do it. So just be sure you remember to reward yourself with the things that you do right because it's not easy. And I think it can kind of work the other way around as well. Like if you know that you have a friend that is kind of a bit of a perfectionist or really likes things a certain way, there's nothing wrong with that. I think the hardest thing for perfectionists to deal with is knowing that life isn't perfect. Well, I suppose it's not really perfect at all if we're being realistic, but in terms of assuming that perfection is at least sometimes achievable, perfection is not 24/7 and it's not all the time. And that can be very disappointing for people that are perfectionists and people that want to make other people happy. I guess sometimes learning to settle can be very difficult. It's not even necessarily about 100%, 50%, 0%, having to settle for 50%. It's just knowing that, like, if you try to do more than 100%, you're really going to end up stressing yourself out and overloading yourself. But just like you don't have to settle for 50% either. Sometimes the closest thing to perfect, or the best that you can be, sometimes it's just the best that you can do. Really, as long as you try your best all the time, it's really the best you can do, right? Okay, so maybe you got 92% today. Maybe you got 85%. Maybe you did get 100% today. That's great, But don't overstress yourself over the small things. Because even if you're not a people pleaser or a perfectionist, really all of us kind of have to get to a point in our life where we realize that sometimes all we can do is our best. And you know what? That's okay. Because even though doing your best and pleasing other people, getting a lot of accomplishments out of life is very important, but you don't want to be the person who stresses yourself out because somebody said, like, they wanted the crust cut off their sandwich and you forgot. Well, that makes you human, People are going to make mistakes sometimes. I guess the interesting thing, honestly, with being a people pleaser or even sort of a perfectionist is that, like I said, sometimes you can have that and not even always realize it. But then once you kind of find yourself fixating over the small things all the time, well, those things can be important, but, to what level? It's not that that thing isn't important, that you shouldn't worry about it. It's just, it kind of, again, goes back to that common component with anxiety and having power. It's allowed to have some power, but don't let it have so much power over your life that everything else is on hold. Like, you have to stay up a ridiculous amount of hours trying to find the perfect outfit to wear to something the next day. Well, if you're taking your appearance with a lot of pride like that, like I said, that's a great thing to do. But yeah, you don't want to lose sleep over something like that. So basically what it boils down to is just kind of just giving yourself some credit and knowing that sometimes there's only so much you can do. And you don't have to give up that part of yourself entirely. You just have to have limitations so that you can keep your sanity and that the people around you can be happy as well. Making it so everybody can be happy in some way, even if it's a little different than you pictured. And if you ever have days where you get 100%, that's great, but you're allowed to devote your time to other things as well. You don't have to keep redoing something over and over again until it's absolutely perfect all the time. You're allowed to have some wiggle room. You're allowed to have some flaws. Sometimes the greatest thing about people is not necessarily the good things about them, but the things that make them human. So, like, again, being a people pleaser can be a very nice trait in the sense that you care about people. But sometimes maybe the interesting things about people can be that maybe their personality is a little off compared to somebody else in their own unique way, or maybe their hairline is a little weird or something. But yeah, really with a lot of things, just try not to sweat the small things too much. And just enjoy being you, and don't put so much pressure on yourself that you don't need, especially if it's causing you a lot of stress. You don't have to be, it's kind of like 0%, 100%. It's like you don't have to be careless, but you don't have to care so much that it makes you a nervous wreck all the time. So just kind of learning to just kind of watch yourself and assess how you handle things and what you can do to make some improvements without having to cause yourself a ridiculous amount of stress for like feeling like you're giving up. Just remember that you're human and so are people around you. And ultimately the people that you make happy, I'm sure that they appreciate it, but I'm sure that they understand that you're human too. So don't get mad at yourself for being you. Just be you and just be the best you can be every day without giving yourself a hard time all the time. Because things in life do happen, and that's okay. Till next time.